Anyway, after capturing that castle, several new characters will join. First is Arthur, Telchu's son, and a mage. And due to the pairing I made, he has both Torto and Farlar blood, which is quite a good combination for a mage, really. And this is Fee, Fury's daughter, who, as you can see here, has minor Holseti blood and skills from Levin there. And yeah, she basically functions the same way as her mother did, except with generally better stats. Arthur pretty much functions as a better version of Azel, unless you pair Levin with Tilchu, in which case he functions as uber broken unit who completely breaks the entire first half of the first generation and can solo this chapter and probably the entire next chapter by himself. But I kind of prefer Levin and Fury for personal reasons. Right, now another important event happens after capturing this castle. You'll be faced with two opponents here, and these are both of Danan's sons. Yohalva, the axe fighter from Safaha, and Johan, the axe knight, aligned with Isaac Castle, actually. Now, as the intro dialogue to them would have indicated, unfortunately, I kind of lost that dialogue, annoyingly. Both of them have a crush on Latch, and one of the villagers says that they're both basically good guys, and they would eagerly join up with you. There's a catch, though. As I said, they are both crazily in love with Latch, and they have a pretty strong sibling rivalry. What this means is... well, I might get around to that later, because here is Julia. And I'll show her stats a bit later, but essentially her true identity isn't known to most of the characters yet, but just by looking at her, it's pretty obvious who she really is. Now, she starts off with no items, but if you do this conversation, she'll get a real life staff, so she can at least function as a secondary healer, which is pretty good. And you'll probably want her to heal as much as possible, because, well, not wanting to spoil anything, but you will want to level her up. She is the same class as Deirdre was, but unlike Deirdre, she doesn't massively suck. She actually has fairly decent growths, and she can promote. So, yeah, not wanting to spoil anything, you might want to get her at least a few levels. Now, here, Johan and Johalva's armies will be both coming towards you. Now, I'll finish off what I said before. Because of all those factors I mentioned, only one of them can join you. Lax can convince one of them to join you, but once she does, the other brother will permanently become an enemy, and you'll have no choice but to kill them. Yeah, kind of sad, but you have to decide between the two of them. You can only have one. Now, in the end, it's really not all that much of a choice, because both of them pretty much just boil down to castle guards, really. But I'll try and explain the pros and cons of the two. Johalva is a fighter who promotes to warrior. He has very high defense, pretty decent skill, and a high base in speed, but a very low growth in that area. Johan is the same class as Lex, so he's a mounted axe knight, who also has pretty good defense, and higher overall speed than Johalva does. Now, in general though, Johalva is statistically better overall but Johann is mounted. So it really depends. For that reason, a lot of people say things like, Johann is better for ranked playthroughs, Johalva is better for non-ranked playthroughs. So, like, in other words, if you want to complete chapters quickly, Johann's probably the better choice. But if you're concerned with stats more than anything else, pick Johalva. And of course, before either one of them joins, you can just abuse their soldiers for free experience, as I'm doing here with Arthur. That wind tome really, really helps. It's a good thing he starts with that. It's much better than Azel's old ones. Also, getting some cheap experience off this guy, Fee. Tip, make sure to pass her down a sword. That'll really, really help her out. In this chapter, particularly. So yeah, it seems, Sigurd's seemingly bizarre act of rescuing the prince of a country his was at war with, that act's still remembered even now. And he's certainly been rewarded for it. Now, I am going to choose Johalva here. The reason I tend to do so, though, mainly, is because he's the only playable fighter/warrior in the game. And to me, that's interesting enough for him to warrant a place in my team. In fact, he was the first playable well, actually, he wasn't the first playable fighter, but he was the first who could promote in the series. So he was essentially... Whoa, she got magic there. He was the first playable warrior in the series. Now, I put Laksh in a bit of danger here, but hopefully she dodges enough to make sure she'll be able to talk to Johalva next turn. Come on, dodge this. And of course, when she dodges one of them, they will die, painfully. Yeah, you don't want to make her angry. Right, now I'll certainly be able to talk to him, and once we do, we won't have any trouble from that end. Then, it's a good idea though to form a bit of a defensive wall against whichever force you plan not to choose. So in this case, I'm preparing to get attacked by Johann's army, because we're going to have to fight them. Now this is probably the first truly, well, troublesome part of the second generation. I actually had to reset quite a few times here. And also make sure someone's actually guarding the castle, because I actually made that mistake once, and even though it generally doesn't affect much except your rank, it's pretty embarrassing to lose a castle, so I tend to reset whenever that happens. Right, next part we continue the battle between brothers.